Hello and welcome to episode 1211 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, August 28th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself? How was the weekend with Nick and everything?
Hey, it was a really fun weekend. Nick is a fantastic house guest. Playing with my kids, and we went out to the game on Friday night, which I don't think we even saw. Maybe like an more than like an inning or two of the actual game itself. We were just mostly talking and
We deal with that
bullshitting.
at AFL too,
Yeah, it
with some
was
of the games.
it was just too fun. I only get to see some of those guys like once or twice a year.
Hmm.
Seeing guys like Sammy Reed and Doug Thorburn, who I love, but I only really see them at the Barf League draft. Was really cool. Always seeing and uh, Jake Crumpler is going to come on the podcast here in a couple weeks on Sunday. And Bubba Entrikin, like it's just such a great group of guys, and of course Nick. Like Nick was just like the most fun person, just super nice, sweet guy, and so yeah, it was a blast of a weekend.
That's fantastic. It sounded like it was going to be, and I'm glad it lived up to it. Had a pretty good weekend over here. Excited about where my fantasy team's going. I'm
Hmm.
chiseling into that deficit there. I've talked about how the top three have kind of run away and hidden from everybody else, but I'm inching my way there. It's now under double digits. It's 9 points. Stretch run here. We're going to get into some things. There was some big news that created one of the bigger fab weekends for closers, right? We haven't seen much this year. I think it's pretty easy to say that Adbert Alzolay is the best closer pickup of the year if you look at it in the aggregate. A few others here and there, but this week offered the chance for two big stretch run situations. One due to injury, which is very unfortunate. The other due to ineffectiveness of a newcomer being traded to a team and just not getting it done. We're going to get into both of those. Another couple other fab moves. We're gonna play 3 up, 3 down. Then we're gonna do hold and fold. That was well received last time we did it. I want to talk about four players. I want to see if you're hanging on to these guys right now because you got to make tougher cuts at this point in the year. And I have one guy on here that people are gonna raise their eyebrows about. It's gonna be a very specific scenario if you don't need the particular category that he usually delivers. It might be time to let this guy go because he's not even delivering that right now. So we'll get to that at the very end. Let's start with the Felix Bautista injury. This sucks. A UCL injury of some sort puts him out, unless you're an AL East fan of another ball club. If you're just kind of a casual fan of that race, or for me, like a Tigers fan, so I'm just kind of looking at the fun teams. I like Baltimore. I'm rooting for them. To see them lose Bautista sucks. But if any team is out there well equipped to just place in another guy who looks like it could be not as effective because Bautista misses bats at a much higher rate than Yanir Cano, but it doesn't look like they should miss too much of a beat in the ninth at least. The only issue is that bridge becomes wobblier to the ninth. So Yanir Cano is the obvious fix here, and I did see a lot of Felix Bautista managers get Yanir Cano. Were you in on Cano at all? I know you have Bautista in a key league. So how did that all sit with you this weekend when Bautista went out for the year?
Yeah, that one hurt. We were at the game, but in a sports bar, right? Like that's attached to the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Watching that game because I was like, oh, he's about to get a save, and he got through the first two guys, and it was like, okay, here we go. And then what? Wait, why is he
What's
leaving in a
going on?
train or
Yeah.
Uh, it's devastating for me personally. I've got Batista in both my main and my auction. So like to lose him, uh, you
Two
know,
massively competing teams for those that don't know.
yeah. I mean, my auction is top 5, 7 in the overall, and my main is just trying to hold on to second place right now, and maybe even try to make a run at first. So like to lose him probably takes me out of first place contention in my main, and it definitely it didn't hurt me so much in my auction, but it gave the guy in second place the ability to try to go get a closer this week, which helps him try to catch me. So
Yeah.
I was in on the Cano bids, but I just didn't have the fab, unfortunately, to get him in any like major spots where I really needed him, which is just unfortunate. I agree that he's going to end up being like the guy. I also, put some kind of like $1 bids on some other guys just to see maybe it turns into a committee of sorts. Because Cano was like lights out at the beginning of the year, and then he went through a pretty rough stretch
He did,
before.
but
he's
come
turned it
back
around.
around. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry,
So
you were
I
gonna
think
say that. He's come back around at least.
yeah, so I think he's the guy. The other guy we're going to talk about, I did get in a couple leagues, so I'm glad to get
Yeah.
Taylor
So
Scott.
yeah, let's bring in the Miami situation. David Robertson's the guy who was traded over, and he's just being ousted due to ineffectiveness. He's just been really, really bad, and they can't keep having that, right? They win a lot of close games. They don't go beat teams up a bunch. Pitching is how they get it done. The starters set things up beautifully for the bullpen. They figure getting a veteran like David Robertson, who was having a hell of a year for the Mets, just quietly getting it done. He wasn't the reason that they were flopping so much. He comes over there and he's just completely ineffective. It's been 10 innings, and I don't want to put too much on this because we don't know. But it is probably hard to get traded in season. We've talked about things like this before, and you never know how anybody's going to react. Some guys, they don't miss a beat and they just go and they're as better than they were before they were traded. And it's like, wow, best trade acquisition of the year. Other guys flop. And it's not always, like I said, because of that. It could just be variance, especially with a reliever. Maybe, these were just going to be the 10 innings that David Robertson didn't have it going, whether he was with Miami or New York. But either way, he's been wildly ineffective. His walk rate's doubled. His home run rate's damn near doubled. It's been bad. He's out. Tanner Scott's in. You mentioned you went and got him, so you did get a replacement for Bautista, even if it wasn't the direct replacement. How confident are you that Scott is the guy? Marlins guy extraordinaire Craig Mish says it is, so I tend to believe it. Is that what drove you to getting Scott as well? Plus, he had a Sunday save.
He's also just been really, really good this year.
Excellent. Yep.
Like there was talk prior to the Robertson trade that he was going to take the job over from AJ Puck. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think he's the logical conclusion here, and I was pretty aggressive in the leagues where I got him, just because I feel like he has a really good opportunity to just be the guy rest of the way, and maybe even the guy coming into next year. So those
Yeah.
of you in keeper leagues, like you may want to try to go get him and pick him up and see if you can kind of hold him in to next season, because I think he has got a pretty good opportunity there as well. I mean, I don't want to necessarily count on AJ Puck, but he's just been so bad in kind of the second half. So I think that it makes a lot of sense for Scott to be the guy right now.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been great. Tanner Scott, both couple of youngish lefties, both Puck and Scott are 28. They were one-time big prospects. Injuries have kind of derailed them from the starter path. They're now both in the bullpen. And Scott's been excellent this year. The walk rate's been in check and everything else is falling into place. He's always kind of had that if the control's there, then everything should be there. And he's been great. So he was a big time pickup too. So two big closers on the market for quality winning teams. I know the Marlins are just one game over 500, but they are winning. They win close games often. And the Orioles, 80 and 48, bottom line is you just want closers on the highest winning teams, and they're the second highest win total in
Yeah.
baseball. So both of those are worth picking up and could be game changers down the stretch. It wasn't much of a bid week for starters, at least not in the 15-team landscape. I don't think much in the 12 team either. I had a list of two guys when it came to starters, and I wasn't all that interested in either. I like this first guy that we're going to talk about, and the other guy I didn't even list, but it was Edward Cabrera. I was just because I was cutting a spot that needed to be filled, I was like, I'll even take a gamble on him, even though I know who he is. But Jordan Wicks was probably the top starter in a lot of formats. Call up for the Cubs, 23-year-old, and impressed in his debut. 5 innings of 2-hit ball, 1 run, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts for Jordan Wicks, the left-hander against Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, got the win as well. So that's a great outing. Of course, opponent has to be taken into some consideration there. He will get Cincy in game 2 of a doubleheader in Cincinnati this week. How interested were you in 23-year-old Jordan Wicks?
I mean, I was interested because, like you said, a lot of 15-team leagues, there was just nothing out there.
Nothing.
It was like I was really trying to figure out a way to drop Jesse Schultens,
Mm-hmm.
and I could there was just nothing out there. Unless you want to take a gamble on a 2-start Luis Severino with one of those starts being at Houston,
Pass.
yeah, it was so ugly. And I mean, this is where we get at this point in the season, they've lost. There's so many arms that have been lost that it's now just slim pickings on the waiver wire. And so, in a number of leagues, I put bids on Wicks, but I ended up just picking up high leverage relievers, guys who might like just sneak a save in the next week or something like that.
Including one in Baltimore, Danny Kalum, and it's
Hmm.
not a hate on Cano, but because Cano doesn't have the closer experience and Kalum's a lefty, there's a world where he steals a save just because matchups
Yeah.
work too. And Cano's kind of easing into the closer role. So I like that Kalum 270 ERA, 110 whip on the year with a bunch of Ks, 51 in his 40 innings of work. He's stolen 3 wins and 2 saves just over the course of the year, and now it's a bit more open. So I think that's a decent gamble that you did there because, yeah, that's kind of what you had to turn to if you didn't go for Wicks because there wasn't a whole lot there. So he was kind of a low dollar guy. Might have been inflated a few bucks in your league if somebody really liked him just because of the lack of options. I think he can be decent down the stretch. I'm just not sure he's a game changer. Are you starting Jordan Wicks at Cincinnati this week? Just as a general idea, obviously who you have matters, but like, were you acquiring him to put him on your bench as a potential weapon, or did you want this trip to Cincy for Wicks?
I mean, I don't want a trip to Cincy. Like, I obviously in a 15-team league, like you might have to make that determination. Like, I've been thinking about like sitting Javier Assad, who's
Yeah.
been fantastic for a month.
And he killed the two step, by the way. The
Yeah.
Detroit Pittsburgh two step that played out as well as it could have for Javier Assad.
So, but I am like super worried about like, hey, do I even start Assad in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely worried about starting a guy like Wicks, who, well, his command is pretty good. The control can, leave him at times. So, but he's got a full arsenal. I think he's going to be pretty good down the stretch. So, like, if he's still available in your league, I think he's the guy you want to pick up.
Yeah, I think definitely worth taking a look at Jordan Wicks. Maybe you don't start him this week. He does get Arizona after that. And both these teams are kind of in between right now. In fact, they played each other this weekend, Arizona and
Mhm.
Cincy, in an interesting battle.
Crazy, crazy game.
I enjoyed that series quite a
Oh my
bit.
god! Like, was it Thursday night where it was pretty much won on a fucking balk? Like,
Yeah, it was a really cool series between these two. And the D-backs, by the way, they were kind of left for dead during one of their lulls. They're back in a wild card spot right now. But yeah, 3-2 game on Thursday, 10-8 on Friday, 8-7 on Saturday, and then 5-2 on Sunday. So 3 really close games. And then even the Sunday game, 5-2, is pretty
yeah,
close there. It ended up being a 4, the Diamondbacks took 3 out of 4 from the Reds there. So that was really interesting. But yeah, with Wicks, be careful going into Cincy. They're not as electric as they have been. They can still get you. Let's talk Parker Meadows because he was one of the top, arguably the top hitter. I think probably the top hitter target, unless you had a random one-off guy available that wasn't available in as many leagues. Talking 15 teams right now with Parker Meadows because he was available in every league. Somebody that people could go for. You mentioned that you got some shares of him. I saw you got, believe it or not, your $10 pickup was one of the higher pickups. He
whoa,
only went, yeah, he went over 20 just once, 21, couple 17s, a 15, couple 14s, 13s, 11, and then your 10 is right there. Kansas City Moose, I think we know who that is. That's Anthony
mm-hmm.
Gialdi. So y'all both paid $10 for him on a backup of 3. I got him for 9 and a backup of 7, which I felt great about. But of course, not even when he's trying, Scott Genstead, aka Striker, just outdoes us as a badass. He got 2 shares of Parker Meadows at $4 and $3. Must be nice, right? I thought my league was poor, and it is, by the way. I think my $9 Parker Meadows was like the third highest bid of the week in our league. But nice scoops by Genstead. Parker Meadows is somebody who could really be a game changer down the stretch and really didn't cause game changing prices because so many leagues are poor. What were your thoughts on Parker Meadows' first week and why you were going for him in your pickups?
He's a guy who can just do everything, right? Like he can get for power, he can steal bases. I think he's going to play every day. The
Mm-hmm.
power has been on display early. He's already got 2 home runs. So, uh,
Including a colossal home
yeah.
run on Friday
Mhm.
night against Ryan Presley. That was so sick. I was at a concert, but I'm watching it on my phone and I'm freaking out in my own little world over there. But anyway, continue on Parker Meadows.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to watch. But I mean, for me, it's just a matter of like, hey, at this point, like I need guys who are gonna play full time and have any sort of pop, right? Like
Yeah.
pop is, or any sort of speed. And for a guy to have both, and to be in a situation where Tigers aren't playing for anything. They need to see what they got in some of these young guys, and I think Meadows is going to play a ton. I probably quadruple checked my bids to make sure I wasn't trying to pick up Austin Meadows. Uh,
Smart, because same team too, right? Like you see
yeah.
Meadows, Detroit, like you
Hmm.
can really make a mistake there. We saw the what was it, the Corey Abbott getting picked up
Yeah.
when Andrew Abbott was out. So yeah, you really got to double and triple check on the Meadows there, but you got the right one. Did you get him anywhere else besides that main event?
Oh yeah, I got him in a bunch of places. Also picked up Marte in a bunch of leagues where he was
Noelve?
still, where he was
Excellent.
still available. He stole 4 bases in his first week, and
Yeah.
um, just I think this is a really, really good time to make sure you're just staying kind of on your P's and Q's and not slacking, right? Like it's really easy at this time of year to be like, oh, I've got my football drafts and I've
Especially
got
if you
this
play
going
football.
on.
Yep.
Yeah, like but like you can still make up ground in a lot of spots, and a lot of other people are going to give up, and a lot of other people are just out of fab. Like my main event, I've got $10 left. I am in the middle of the pack in terms of
Yeah.
fab. Like
And we were
you
talking about
know,
that offline. Like the leagues are poor. I mentioned that with the bids for my Parker Meadows, and obviously Jenstead's leagues are probably coming in poor if he's getting them at 4 and
mhm.
$3. We have two guys in my league that do have money, but they haven't been as active as far as going into the bids. So then you look at kind of the competitors, and my $29 sits third amongst the competitors,
Yeah.
and only one of the people ahead of me has more. Rob DiPietro has 28 to my 29, and John Posma, who's in first, has 17. So the top two guys are running poor. Your buddy Dave McDonald's in that league. He's got $10 just like you. We have two zeros in our league. We have a 1, a 6, a 9, and then it gets to Dave's 10 and the double digit startup. So yeah, and I think this is something that's happened across many leagues. We've talked about the phenomenon a bit. There's just been a lot more fab being spent this year. I
Hmm.
think more people are engaged. Bidding lists are deeper. I think we're seeing more articles, more pods, more focus on it, and people are being more aggressive because of that too. And now you're seeing it's creating these potential pockets of value down the stretch because people just don't have any money. And so
Well,
we're going to see some game changers acquired cheaply.
the other thing that we're seeing this year, and I think this is going to be a trend moving forward, is major league teams being more aggressive on younger players,
Absolutely.
right?
It's 2 years in a row now. Don't forget
Yeah.
the rookie class we had last year. Remember when we said it can't happen again? It did, except on the pitching side, right? Like last year
Hmm.
was a lot of great hitters. This year's a lot of great hitters and pitchers. And I agree with you. This is going to continue. I don't
Yeah.
think this is a blip at all. So I'm 100% with you. Now, knowing that and seeing a second year of this, I know we've talked about this a little bit here and there. Are you going to change how you approach Fab next year? Do you feel comfortable having $10? There's 4 bid periods left, right? So you essentially have 10 moves left at a dollar a
Hmm.
piece. Are you obviously you'd rather have more, but are you comfortable enough with where you stand in your standings and having $10, or are you going to alter next year to be like, I need to have closer to 50 or 25? How has this year affected what you plan to do next year?
Obviously, it'd be great if I had $50 right now, or even like $30. I don't even think 50 is necessary at this point, but uh, I like what I've done so far. I can nitpick on certain bids, certain guys. I think I want to make a few less of those like $50 bids. And like I'm okay. Like I spent $300 on Yuri Perez. I think Yuri Perez has been worth that $300,
Yeah, and there's been
especially
a
for.
handful of guys that have been right, and
Mhm.
I've talked about being a bit negative on that pool of those big triple digit guys, but you can go through and find a lot of hits, and it
Yeah.
is a lot of those pitchers this year. So I'm not sitting here saying that it never works. I'm not sure I want to be in the low dollars at this point in the year. Although if the rest of your league is too, it's like there is a cutoff point where you have too much,
Hmm.
and you don't want to have like 120 right now when the next
Yeah.
highest has 40, because that leverage that there's not enough talent to leverage that. And so I'm with you. You said you wouldn't even need 50. You'd kill for 30 right now, just 20
Yeah.
extra. And I'm at 29 and I feel pretty good with 4 bid periods left.
Yeah, I think because what it comes down to right now is I virtually have 10 $1 bids,
Yeah.
right? Like that I need to spread out over the next 4 fat periods. So I'm pretty much staying pat until I get someone hurt.
Yes.
And uh, if I had the ability right now to make, 10 $2 bids, I would feel a lot better. Or 10 $3 bids, because there's a lot of people in my leagues who, like, they're in the same situation as me, and because I'm
Mm-hmm.
higher in the standings, I'm going to lose those tiebreakers. And to have the ability to make the $2 bid as opposed to the $1 bid would be really nice. But ultimately, I feel pretty good about where what I've done this year in Fab, and I think I'm gonna pretty much kind of keep virtually the same strategy with, maybe I'm gonna dial back some of my, kind of early season $50 bids into more like, 15 $20 bids.
You're talking about
Uh,
those 50s that like you win and you're happy about it, but the backup was 22. You went maybe a little too aggro for a guy that probably wasn't going to be as big of a game changer as you thought, even if he had fully panned out. Is that the player type that you're talking about, where those should be tighter bids, but early on maybe you're spending more because you're like, I've got $1,000, I'll be fine. Is that the bid class that you're talking
Yeah,
about?
I'm talking like the guys who are like, "Hey, this is a really good streamer this week, but maybe a guy I could keep for another, few weeks." And and I bid $50 on him, or $45 on him, and maybe I wouldn't have gotten him for 15 or 20, but I could have gotten two of those guys, right? Like,
Yes.
and like Hayden Wesneski is a really good example of a guy like, hey, he came back up. I was like, oh, I think he's going to be back up for good. I spent $187 on him when I really didn't need to, and two, I just blew $187. And so
Yeah.
staying away from those kind of bids, I don't mind spending up extra for guys I really believe in and think, hey, this guy can carry me, the rest of the way, like Yuri kind of has. But I think the guys who are kind of like, hey, he's just in a really good spot this week, or maybe for the next 2 or 3 weeks, $50, $60 isn't worth that. So
No.
I would much rather, spend $15 this week and $15 next week as opposed to spending 60 right now.
Yeah, it is the guy you're putting 60 on. Is the guy that you have second, third, and fourth behind him, are they that much different that he should be 60 and the other guy's 24 or whatever, right? Like that gap that you have, bring that down. I had some issues like that myself, looking back on an old bid for Rodolfo Castro, somebody I did pump up. You guys know I liked him. When he was cut and then ready to go to Coors, he was about to have a Coors week. I remember bidding on this, and I put 83 on him, which, in April 16th, you're like, oh, I can get the rest of the year. And again, he was a guy I did like. He went 43 back up. And the worst part about that is I raised it from 62 to 83 late because I was like, people are going to jump him because he's going to Coors, blah, blah, blah. It's Rodolfo Castro, Paul. No one's going to jump shit. Although in that same week, I also last second jumped Taj Bradley from 173 to 186, and I got him, and the backup was 179. So, sometimes your late tweaks work, although I guess you could dispute how much did Taj Bradley work now that he's not
Yeah.
around, and there was some pain. In fact, actually, I do want to check that up real quick. I want to see exactly what I got from Taj Bradley because he's no longer on my team. And for my $186, I got a 5.44 ERA and a 1.45 whip. I would say that didn't
Not
work.
good. Yeah, not good.
4 wins, 64 Ks, and 46 innings.
For
So
those who are not up on the stats, that is
that,
nothing.
that's not. You have to be an advanced stat head to know that that's not great. I will say this though, I'll be in on Tosh Bradley next year. I'm not really worried about him in the long
He's gonna
term.
have I mean, he should have a rotation spot. I'm
He should
surprised he
have a
doesn't right
rotation
now.
spot, and I don't think people are going to be so keen on what he did this year that the price is
No.
going to be too crazy. So yeah, I will. I will still
He'll,
buy even
he'll
though he
be a
kind of
he'll
burnt
be a
me.
forgotten guy you get in the 20s, somewhere.
And he could be a Luis Patino, where he
Yep.
just kind of keeps getting the hype and never comes through, or this year was a stair step and next year he breaks out. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm not going to be totally off of him. Anyway, that was Parker Meadows that we kind of got on that tangent with. Eager to see what he does. Obviously, anytime I can get a Tiger that actually has some quality, I love that as a double dip there as a fan of the ball club. So hopefully you can keep going. Let's play some 3 up, 3 down. And let's go to somebody who, coming into the year, I was not the biggest fan. And, I don't think I've been anywhere running my big mouth about any victory laps on this one, even though at times probably could have gotten away with it if you had looked at the composite numbers on Teoscar Hernandez. But I'm glad I didn't say any bullshit because it's a 6-month season and he's had an amazing August that really puts him in line for a pretty good season. He also had a great June. April, May, and July, all pretty bad for Teoscar, though. That said, when you put up 2 months, one of a 949 OPS, the other of a 1050 so far here in August, that can be enough to kind of support your season. This month, 6 homers, 366 average, the 1050 OPS I mentioned with 17 ribbies and 13 runs. If you don't know off the top of your head, or if you haven't researched it lately, do you know where Teoscar is among outfielders on the player rater?
I mean, he's going to be pretty high, which is crazy considering how bad his season was for such a long period of
Yep.
time. I'm going to say he is 23rd.
You're really good at this. You've
Yeah.
done well on this. He's 21.
Yeah.
You nailed some the other day. I remember that you were just like one or two off. So you're very good at eyeballing these.
Outfield has been atrocious.
And I think that's part of it. But again, let's give him his due here. 22 homers, 262, 6 steals. That's basically what he did last year in the same volume, right? He played only 535 plate appearances because he missed some time. He's at 544 this year, basically matching his output. I thought going to Seattle would lower the output, so I was wrong on him. Like even if he flops in September, excuse me, I'm still going to say, you know what? I took the loss there on him. Now, the guy who took over him, Fraley, I still feel pretty good about that. That was kind of one of my big, who do you like here between these two? And I went Fraley. Obviously, Fraley's been hurt, but he's put up the power speed season 15-20 with 263. So that's a win in a one-on-one battle. But I was worried that Teoscar would have some struggles, and he really hasn't. He's just made up for it on the road. He does have a 701 OPS at home, 231 average, but 290 and 813 on the road has made up for it. So Teoscar's looking pretty good. Let me ask you this, though. Let's spin it forward. 31 years old next year. Does have a strikeout issue, which should put some pressure on his batting average, but 267, 262 the last 2 years, not too bad. 20 something homers, little handful of steals. In fact, 6 is his number. He had 6 last year, 6 this year, 6 in 2020, 6 in 2019, all different samples, but he likes 6 steals. He even had 12 in 2021, which is, of course, 6 times 2. Tasker next year, in or out, do you think? Assuming the price is basically the same, because I think that's what it'll be.
It depends on where he ends up. He is a free agent at the end of the year.
That's right.
And this is going to be one of these situations where, like, we look at what he's done fantasy wise and we go, hey, he should get a nice little contract. Teams don't value him in the same way that we do in fantasy. He's bad defensively, so I think a lot of competitive teams that would want him to come in are going to want him to DH. And how many teams just want a guy that is going to mostly DH for you? And then he doesn't get on base a ton, right? Like, he doesn't walk. And so how many teams are going to be, I mean, think about like Eddie Rosario, because it's a very similar type of plate profile.
Wait,
like, how difficult
can we bring in, sorry, just while you're saying that, can we bring in the next guy on the list, Marcelo Zuna?
Sure.
Because he's having a great year I don't want to say out of nowhere, but like he's rebounded, man. 29 homers, 70 ribs, 263 average. He looks like freaking Marlins version or first year Atlanta back when he was in the 2020 season. And I bring him up. He got a 4-year, $65 million deal back in 2021. But in just the 2 short years since then, I agree with you. Teams aren't really valuing that sort of profile as much. Do you think Teoscar gets something in that realm, or does he even get a 4-year commitment?
I would be surprised if he got a 4-year commitment. I mean, you got to remember, one, Ozuna was younger when he got that deal. He'd also shown the ability at times to take walks. Like, I mean, he had an 11% walk rate in St. Louis and a 20% strikeout rate prior to
much better play skills.
Yeah, and so I think teams would value that a little bit more. Though the defensive issues were definitely there, similarly to Oscar. So I really want to see where he ends up, what kind of situation, what kind of park he ends up in. What he's done is he really struggled this year making contact, especially in the zone.
Teoscar did, you're saying.
Teoscar did, yeah. And usually, like, what do you want a guy to do when he's going through that problem? Hey, get a little patient. Don't swing so much outside of the zone. Wait for your pitch. He's done the exact opposite. He is ramped up his zone swing to like 84%. Like,
I'm attacking.
I'm just gonna swing my way out of this, and that's what he's done. And we talked about him back on August 11th, and I said, like, hey, don't drop him necessarily, because like he could just get hot and like end up helping you win a league, and that's kind of what he's done here.
Is he who I asked you if this was like a Soler situation?
Yeah.
Remember, was it 2 years ago that I was like, Soler's a cut, and you're like, no. And I think I referenced that call that you had. I said, is Teoscar in that same realm? You said, stick with him. He's been electric since. Yeah, we did talk about him on the 11th, as you mentioned. He's just been cooking since then. So I wanted to bring him up again because he's been a fascinating player. And like I said, I was out. He was in 3 down that day. And just in 2 weeks since then, he's completely flipped himself, and Teoscar Hernandez is now in 3 up. So love him the rest of the year, of course. Obviously, you're not cutting or anything like that. I do agree with you, though. It is hard to answer for next year until we see where he is. Do you worry that Teoscar, if he goes to the right park, like a big hitter's park, that he'll be overvalued? Or do you think that even a nice, friendly hitter's park, good lineup, will keep him fairly valued? What do you think on something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll probably be overvalued, more than likely. Especially if he continues what he's doing now. He's one of these guys like he could go cold rest of the way. Like, right?
True.
You just talked about how like, hey, he was hot in June and then he was atrocious in July. Like, he could be atrocious in September and just tank his value. So, it's kind of a to be determined.
Yeah.
Based on how Teoscar finishes the rest of the season and then where he ends up next year. The hard part is kind of figuring out what kind of place wants a corner outfield bat that's not good defensively.
Yeah, and that's too hard to figure right now, and so we'll
Yeah.
just have to kind of wait and see. There's also the world where they go to the playoffs, and if they make it, and he pops off there and adds to his, so he can go the other way. You talk about how he could get cold and tamp down some of the interest. He could also get hot and amp it up to a really crazy level too. So it can definitely run the other way, just depending on how things go for Teoscar Hernandez. Let's bring Ozuna back up. Like I said, he's been killing it. 29 homers, 70 ribs. He had 23 and 56 all of last year in 52 fewer plate appearances, or 52 more plate appearances, pardon me. And his batting average is up nearly 30 points. He's been great. Is he back? Is Marcell Ozuna back? Is he trustworthy for next year? He'll be 33, of course. He's shown power before. He's never swooned like this. He had a couple swoon years there in St. Louis before getting back together in 2020 with Atlanta. Of course, that was the shortened season, so how much stock could we put into it? Total flop in 21, off the field issues. He and his wife have seemingly just a horrendously toxic relationship, beating each other up. Obviously bringing him up. I don't know. I probably don't have to say a disclaimer with our audience. You guys aren't stupid, but just because we're talking about him in a positive light fantasy wise, we do not advocate for anything off the field. Shouldn't have to say it, but just in case people, I've seen crazier things about talking about assholes as if talking about their fantasy numbers means we like them. At any rate, Ozuna has been cooking, and he's on all formats must play. How are you valuing him for next year? I'll point out 7 homers, 356 average this month, which is why he's on 3 up. Ozuna for next year, though, how do you view him? Because he'll still be with Atlanta. Well, unless they trade him.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine they're gonna trade him. I just what would they get on the open market for a guy like Ozuna?
And 18 mil for 25 homers and a 250 average is fine for their setup with all the saved money they have.
And he's been walking at a 10% rate. Like, he's getting on base outside of the hits. So, I mean, I think he is probably going to end up being a guy who goes in like the 140, 150 area, like Anthony Santander-ish.
Okay. He's the 18th outfielder this year, by the way. And Santander's 22nd. So interesting. And you nailed it again, by the way.
Yeah, I think he's going to, but I think that means he's going to be undervalued because Santander is a guy, because he doesn't run, he gets a little undervalued. And I think in spite of the fact that we're going to see a lot of, changes in terms of what the fantasy landscape's values in terms of stolen bases with the uptick, people still like those guys that add at least a little bit of speed, right? Like, I know he's not a burner, but he's going to get me 8. And they devalue the guys who end up, stealing 0 or stealing 1 or 2, probably a little bit too far. So I think Ozuna is one of those guys that I don't mind putting on my roster, especially he's probably going to get devalued a little bit even more because he's a little bit older too. So it's a fantastic lineup. You want a piece of that Atlanta lineup. It doesn't matter where he hits in it because it's just so good top to bottom.
It's always good. Yeah. It's just been great.
Yeah, I think Ozuna's a guy I'll probably be targeting, especially in that 140, 150 kind of area, if that is where he's going.
Yeah, I could totally see him being overlooked And maybe even partly because of the off the field stuff. And which, by the way, I don't begrudge anybody. You're playing fantasy to have fun. You don't want to root for an asshole. Some people see him as number generators, and assholes welcome. Others say, I want cool guys. I want people I can root for. And it's totally up to you how you want to manage that. That's why this game's great. You can win in many different ways. So that might keep Ozuna's value down.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk Mitch Garver, because I think he's been sneaky great for most of the year. Now, he hasn't played all year. He has missed some time. He missed all of May. He missed a bunch of April, missed a little bit of time in June and July, I believe, too. So he's been in and out quite a bit. But when he's been playing, he's been great. He's been particularly electric here in August. 7 homers, 313 average, 1014 OPS for Mitch Garver. And Justin, Garver's going to retain catcher eligibility because the injuries and everything. Heim was down for a while. He's got 27 games there. So he's back. He's got that guaranteed catcher for next year, and he's back crushing the way he did in 2021. Not quite like the way he did in 2019, which was just a crazy season from Garver. But what are we doing with Mitch Garver here as a catcher eligible player again for next year? I think he's an easy play right now. 2 catcher leagues, all formats, all that sort of stuff. So I don't think there's much analysis there. But what about next year for the 33-year-old Garver, who again will be catcher eligible still?
Yeah, I mean, Garver's a guy that I tend to run away from just because of his injury profile,
Sure.
and especially behind the plate. Like those, catchers just get nicked up more than any other position player.
He'll be a free
Um,
agent too, by the way, just FYI.
yeah, and I mean, it's not like he's a very good catcher. Like, so, what is his value going to be on the open market? Is he a guy that teams are going to be that interested to go out and get? So I definitely want to see where he ends up before I kind of commit to being like, oh, he's a dude I'm looking for. But I also don't think he's going to be like super expensive. Like 12 home runs, 58 games played, like that's not someone that people are going to be like jumping over to like go get. So I think he'll be like a pretty easy C2 that, if he's not playing a lot, if he's not in a good situation, you can drop for another C2. So I don't mind him, but he's again just not someone I'm super enthused by because of that injury history.
I think that's totally fair with Mitch Garver. And, I'm with you too. And I am going to play a bit of wait and see on where he goes to see how interested I will be. He'll be one of those guys that if he is just dirt cheap because he's old and people just don't really believe in him or anything, then I could see going for him in 2 catcher formats. But I'm not really seeking out Mitch Garver because I'm with you. The injuries are just too scary. The last time he played 100 games was 2018. Even in the huge, colossal 2019 killer breakout season, it was 93 games. And so that's kind of the tough part on Garver is, what can you expect from him? And the
Yeah.
answer is usually not too much playing time wise. Let's go 3 down. Jack Sawinski has been ice cold, and that's what this profile type can do, where you've got the huge swing and miss. He does have great walks too. So he usually stabilizes his OBP with a 15% walk rate, but he's hitting 202 with 21 homers, 9 steals. And when that profile goes cold, it looks like a cut in a lot of formats. And here in August, it's 0 homers and an 091 average for Jack Sawinski after 5 homers in each of the last 3 months, May, June, and July, with varying averages. Decent average in July, bad in June and May. But when you get in the 5 homers, there's some value there. Are you holding Jack Sawinski anywhere right now during this slump? Or is he that kind of guy that when he's cold, you cut, when he's hot, you pick him back up, even in 15 teamers? What do you think of Jack Sawinski?
And on base percentage leagues, I mean, he's walking at a 15% rate.
Yeah,
So,
still maintaining that.
yeah, I mean, but in your standard roto leagues, or even in a lot of points leagues, especially if you don't get extra points for walks, like you probably should drop him. But he is one of those guys, like he could just go on a tear out of nowhere. I mean, he's very much similar type profile with walks as Teoscar. So, right, like he's just a guy who, he's just going to try to swing his way out of it.
You're saying he's Teoscar with walks.
Yeah, he's Teoscar with walks. Yeah. I mean, he's just, he's going to try to swing his way out of it. And that is going to lead to these huge ups and downs, even more so than Teoscar, because I just think he has a worse hit tool in general. So, yeah, I mean, you probably shouldn't be rostering him in any average-based formats at this point.
Hard.
So, the only issue with that is he's gonna play like he's like it's the Pirates. Like what else, like
roasted.
Henry Davis is on the IL.
That's a good point.
On aren't they playing Josh Palos right now?
Palacios, yeah, the
Palacios.
Palacios brothers, by the way, they, because it was a kind of a light week. Those two both were Richie and Josh were getting some love on the waiver market this week just
I
because
was
of
a big
options.
fan of Josh when he got drafted. I would, like, and so it's kind of fun to see him actually doing something.
And they got to
So,
play against each other too, so that
yeah,
was fun watching them kind of go back and forth. I want to say Richie's in St. Louis and
yeah,
Josh is
St. Louis,
with
yeah,
Pittsburgh. So yeah, I mean, with Sawinski, is he one of those guys that like once he kind of hits that first homer, you start looking back to pick him up in
yeah.
daily pickup leagues?
Or if like if you're just desperate for power right now, and I know a lot of people are, like, home runs are a category that are really really bunched together. Like,
Yep.
if your average is okay, you might just put him in there and hope that, like, hey, you catch it before it starts, because he will go on another stretch. Like, I would be really surprised if he doesn't have another 8 or 9 home runs left in the tank, rest of the way. It's just a matter of, like, what are you going to get around that? And so, like, if you're desperate for home runs and your batting average is okay, I don't mind picking them up right now and just like praying that it starts to rain this week.
Yeah. I'm with you as far as like maybe a preemptive pickup too, if you're desperate, depending on the league format, if you can stash Sawinski, because yeah, once he gets hot, he's a guy who can go on
Like,
a tear. Let me take a look at their
who
pitching
who
that
would
they're
you
facing
rather
this
who
week.
would you rather have right now? Would you rather have Sawinski or DJ Peterson, who's been on a tear?
You mean DJ Stewart?
Oh, sorry, DJ Stewart. Yeah, sorry.
And you were probably thinking of DJ Peters and David
Yeah.
Peterson. So I followed you though. I think I might go Stu, at least in the very short term. I'm looking at how many lefties they're facing. They're only facing one lefty, the Mets are, for Stewart. And
Okay.
with Sawinski, he's got 3 lefties this week, including 2 in the first half at KC, Reagans and Zerpa. Zerpa doesn't scare me, but Reagans, even if Sawinski starts, I might lean Stewart. Did you lose me there for a second? My camera
Yeah.
went out.
Yeah, I lost you there for a second,
At
but
anyway, I'm leaning Stu, especially because next week Pittsburgh gets Milwaukee and Atlanta. It's all righties, but it's Burns, Woodruff, Peralta,
mm,
Morton, Strider. Bryce Elder's actually been pitching a little bit better lately. He's probably the easiest one to pick on there. So yeah, that's tough for Sawinski. Let's talk Matt Chapman. He has been freezing. And I want to say, is he also nicked up right now too? Or am I making that up? Maybe he's just terrible. But let me give you some numbers on what Matt Chapman's been doing because he was looking pretty good early in the year. Like, hey, nice pickup. He actually had a great April that really carried him. He
yeah.
hit 384 with a 485 BABIP. He's hit 202, 200, 247, 197 in the month since. However, in those other 3 months, before this month, he had 9 homers combined. So that was, at least sustaining some value. But 7, 8, and 8 ribbies. To be honest, Chapman's been dog shit for a while, Justin, and
Yeah.
people are just kind of holding him because of inertia and because of how much that April really floated him. 1 homer and 197 average here in August. Is there any spot where you're holding Matt Chapman right now?
No, and he did leave the game yesterday with a middle finger
Okay,
injury.
so I didn't make that up. Good.
Yeah. So, and you add that into the struggles, and you go, I think he's droppable in every format. Like,
Every format right now.
yeah, like, I mean, like, AL only, maybe you're holding on to him just because there's literally no one available. But
Yeah,
um,
but any
yeah,
mixer, I
any
can't
mixed
see it.
league, I think you have to drop him right now, and you probably should have dropped him already. He's just, like I
That's the
said,
real thing.
he's just been atrocious. And I mean, I think this is a really good thing to remember for next season is, like, early season hot streaks are great, and you do want to jump on them, but you need to be watching the skills because the skills reverted back really, really quickly.
Hmm.
Back to being a guy who just cannot make contact in the zone. And that is really only playing for Toronto right now because he's got a contract and he's pretty great defensively still. So yeah, you gotta just drop Chapman. He shouldn't be on any rosters.
Yeah, that's totally where I'm at. And again, the anchoring effect of April's on both ends. A guy that struggled too much, you might overlook how well they're doing when they get out of April. And a guy who did really well, you might overlook how shitty they are from April on. Because, at the end of May, Chapman was hitting 288, 366, 490. And so it completely clouded the fact that he went 202, 273, 312 in May itself. And then he put another crappy one in June, but at the end of the month, it's a 789 OPS, 262 average with a bunch of homers. And so you're thinking, I'm still getting good work here. And you have to be careful with those big Aprils. How much are they going to impact how you're looking at a player there and maybe lead to some bad decisions? Let's talk Jock Peterson. And my biggest issue with him, yes, he's struggling a bit. He kind of goes through ups and downs, but two big players returning this week, Mike Yastrzemski and Mitch Haniger, one of which I picked up. I took a spec on Haniger, just hoping he can catch a little fire there. But with Peterson, he's not playing that well, and two guys who could take playing time from him coming back does give me a little bit of nerves if I have Jock Peterson anywhere. He's definitely a deeper league type of play, but he has 4 homers and a low 200s batting average since the start of July. Are you hanging on to Jock Peterson in any deeper formats?
I mean, yeah, he's actually been pretty good in the month of August and has done his best work in the last 2 weeks. He's just not in for the power that he has previously, and it's watching a lot of Giants games. It's just a lot of stuff falling short of the fence. He had a triple in the game on Friday, or
Okay,
like
put out a little show for y'all.
Like it was a little ridiculous. I think he's gonna play. Strong side platoon.
You sure, even with those two guys?
Yeah, I think Meckler probably heads back down.
Who plays center then? Matos?
Oh, maybe Meckler doesn't.
Yaz?
No.
Does
Yaz
plays center?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yaz plays center. So, they don't care about their defense. They've made that abundantly
true.
clear,
I mean, but they're competing. They want to.
Yeah.
But I think it is Yaz. Okay, so then Yaz plays center. Meckler out.
Mm-hmm.
I think Matos might have to get sent out too. Then.
Yeah, Matos probably gets sent out too. So, he is what it is. Like he probably shouldn't be rostered in anything more than or anything shallower than a 15-team league, and I don't think you have to roster him in a 15.
4 lefties this week too. So if you wanted to cut Jock this week.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to cut him like this week and ride somebody else, maybe I am for a future to jump back on Jock Peterson, because you're saying that the power is like just there and maybe some of the homers are going to start going. But yeah, as it stands right now, it's been a little rough for him. And I did speculate on Haniger, not as like an anti-Jock play. It was more just pro Haniger, because when Haniger was healthy, he played every day. And I think as long as they believe he's healthy, he's playing every day and he can hit for some mad bombs. So I thought that was a solid pickup for me.
Yeah.
All right, let's play some hold or fold and get out of here. We talked about Hunter Green on Friday with Nick. I think we all advocated starting him. It didn't go well. So that's 2 duds now. 13 earned runs in 6 2/3 since coming back. Are you holding Hunter Green in 10s and 12s? I think in 15s you have to, because we talked about how little there is available. You bench him and you just see what's up. But what about in 10s and 12s where there will be more options available? Are you holding Hunter Green right now?
I mean, I'm pretty sure what I said was this is who he is. Like, this is like, you got to take the really good with the really, really bad. I don't have a problem dropping him necessarily, especially if you don't want that volatility. But if you're chasing strikeouts, like how many guys are going to be available on your waiver wire? I don't care, even at 10 or 12. Like whether those guys are going to, be able to help carry you in the same way that Hunter Green can. So this is why I don't like drafting guys like Hunter Green. It's why I stay away from guys like Hunter Green, because I am always worried that the volatility is just going to bite me at the most inopportune times. And if you were in a head-to-head league trying to get a playoff spot, like that crushed you. I think my beliefs and my advice is the same as it's always been with Hunter Green. Is like, if you can handle that volatility, you're probably going to have to roll with it, because there's very few guys are going to be on waiver wire with as high of upside as him. But again, this is why I stay away from these guys.
I mean, it is really tough with this kind of volatility, and his park adds to it. So it can be pretty rough. I will say I would kind of have to know exactly who people are going for.
I think you got to keep them this week because they're at San Francisco. So like,
oh yeah,
it's a great matchup in a great home park. and then they're
He gets
home.
Seattle the following week.
Yeah, it starts off a two-step with Seattle next week. So, like, yeah, I think you're holding on to him right now in pretty much every format, and just praying that Mitch Haniger doesn't go just ape crap on him.
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair with Hunter Green. It is hard to get away, and maybe there aren't as many good options in 10s and 12s anyway, right? There'll be more than
Mm.
15s, but they still might not be as good as what Hunter Green can do. So, and I also agree with playing at San Francisco this week. So I'm with you. I'm gonna hold. I'm gonna start him this week. If it's another bad one this week, though, I am cutting. Even on the two-step the following week, I would move
Really?
away
I
from.
mean,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that's
At that point,
really.
if I get another dud, man, what am I holding on for?
Yeah, I know that. I mean, that's fair. You're just looking at a two-step of Seattle and St. Louis next week.
Both at home though, and both
Yeah.
teams like say Seattle's playing well, and St. Louis again they can get you. You got to be careful. They can get you.
And then he'd line up for either at Detroit or at the Mets the following week. I think you got to just hold on to him. I think I
I
I
don't think
don't
you
like
have
Hunter
to.
Green.
I
I think
think you
you do.
should
I think you
right
have to
now.
hold. Yeah.
Like okay, like Brandon Pfaadt's available in our 12 team on Yahoo. So I'm looking at Yahoo right now. He's 12% rostered at Yahoo. I'd rather have Brandon Pfaadt. Logan Allen's 40%. I'll pick up Logan Allen. JP France had that bomb out, but I don't think he sucks. Now he's 56%. Zach Littell, 19. There's options. I don't think you have to hold Green. I'm holding him this week. I'm with you. Another dud, I'm out.
Yeah.
And we can reassess. Maybe you change your mind on Friday. Maybe if he has
Mhm.
another dud, hopefully I remember we can bring it up and I'll see if you're still with
Yeah.
it. If he puts up another 6 earned in 3 innings, and then
Especially at San Francisco, then you're
yeah,
like, oh
then we'll
man.
test your metal there and
Mhm.
see what's up. But as it stands right now, Justin's fully in. I'm in for this week on Hunter
I'm
Green.
fully in with the caveat that I know he can just destroy you any given day.
Exactly. Yeah, you are not discounting the
This
volatility.
right now, the schedule means so much.
That's
Like, you
true.
throw out a lot of like, hey, I really love this guy, I really hate this guy, and you go, hey, what are the best matchups to play?
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Schedule is hugely important at this time of year. Is there anything in the schedule that has you keeping this guy? Speaking of volatility, this is basically just AL Hunter Green, except he's had a higher ceiling last year. Dylan Cease. He's going to Baltimore and then a trip to KC after that are his next 2 starts. He's got a 7.85 ERA in his last 6, 4.81 ERA, 146 WHIP for the year. We've said it a few times throughout the year talking about Dylan Cease. This is what 40 grade command does. This is the volatility of 40 grade command. And we've mentioned our friend Nick Pollock. He was notably anti-Cease last year, caught some flack for it. Turns out he might have just been a year early. And the reasons that he was skeptical of Cease last year have come to fruition this year. How do you feel about Cease, and are you holding him in formats right now down the stretch when win probability is low and he's just blasting the ratios week in and week out?
I'm gonna meme a little bit here because
Okay.
as the guy who loves to take April victory laps, I'm gonna victory lap on all the people who took April victory laps on Dylan Cease. Yeah, that's just all the people who are like, oh, people were like bagging on Dylan Cease this year.
What are
Well,
they
there's a
worried about?
yeah, this is why, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why I was not in on Cease this year, especially at the price, was I just saw this potential downside. And when you're taking your first or second starting pitcher, you don't want to have this kind of potential downside.
Yeah.
Um, and so again, though, you look at the schedule at Baltimore, great place to pitch. At Kansas City, great place to pitch. Then he lines up in 3 weeks. He lines up for a two-step as long as things stay, relatively the same in terms of their rotation schedule for
Yeah.
home versus Kansas City and home versus Minnesota Twins. Like,
Oh my
I don't know
goodness.
how you're dropping this. Like, I understand he's been bad, but like,
That's how though, right? Like he's not been pitching well. Like, yes, the schedule matters, but it's not the only thing. I guess you're heartened by, even in the midst of this ugly run that I mentioned, 4 C's, he does have 2 gems, the Yankees
yeah,
and Milwaukee. He looked like himself. And even against Colorado in Colorado, yeah, he gave up 5 runs, 4 of them earned, but he had 6 strikeouts, 2 walks. So that was still there.
you
But
just
getting
ate that freaking Oakland start. Like
getting
that just
diced by Oakland, man. Like, I don't know, that dents my confidence. I will say this: I'm not starting Cease this week. If I hold him, I'm benching him, even in Baltimore.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that at all. Like
Okay, so
that's
I'm
yeah,
okay if you want to hold and try to get to that KC start, and then the what would you say, KC and who else after that?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. If you're trying to hold to get to that, those two, I get it. I think you should sit Cease this week though, because
Yeah.
Baltimore is a good spot to pitch in, but that lineup can definitely get you, and I don't want to take
And then
another.
you can like if he's not like looking like the Dylan Cease that we saw last year, you can drop him because he's going to finish out the year with Boston, Arizona, like like two of Boston, Arizona, San Diego. So like you can just after that two step with Kansas City, Minnesota, you can probably drop him unless he looks elite, down
Yeah,
the stretch.
I think that makes a lot of sense with regards to Dylan Cease right now, and it just hasn't been there this year. His volatility has been severe. Let's do a couple of hitters here. Hold or fold. Leody Taveras. Speaking of victory laps, maybe we were taking a little preemptive one
Yeah.
here. We're a show that likes him, and we were, I don't think we were obnoxious with it. We were saying this is why we stick with this guy. We like him. He's still only 24. Overall, it's still been a fine year, right? If you look up at this, you say I got 12 and 11 with a 261 average from Leody Taveras. Sure, fine. The trajectory of it though has been tough, particularly of late, where after a big May and June, he's been nothing. 3 homers, bad average, and 3 steals. And it's 2 homers, 2 steals, in a 555 OPS in his last 148 plate appearances since July 14th. That's basically the All Star break. You throw in the rest of July, it doesn't make it much better, by the way. So basically, the last 2 months have been rough for Leody. Are you holding him in 15 teamers even?
I think he is droppable in 15 teamers. Here's the thing, like he is gonna play. And he's continued to play in spite of these struggles because he's so good defensively. And
Yeah,
unlike my Giants, the Rangers care about Leo Tavares' defense. So he's gonna continue to play every day. And there is speed in the profile and there is power in the profile. And yes, he's going to be hitting ninth, but that means Marcus Simeon and Corey Seager coming up right behind him.
to drive him in.
Yeah, so I'm, there's not much that is super rosy about the profile, but I will say since the All Star break, he's making just above league average contact. And it is a lot of weak contact, but because he's fast, he can outrun some of that. Um, I think I would try to hold him in 15s because what you're looking at the weight on the waiver wire is pretty garbage or part-time players. And Leonard Taveras is a full-time player on a really good offense. He's got power and speed. Hey, it would not surprise me if, hits 3 or 4 home runs rest away and steals 8 or 9 bases. And so I'm willing to kind of stick around and hold on to him. You can't start him right now though. He should be a bench option.
Should be a bench bat right now, Leody Taveras. Totally agree with that. Too tough to start. What about somebody in a since we're talking 15 teamers here, which by the way means in 10s and 12s, we have no problem cutting Leody. There's almost certainly options out there. But in 15s, it's more dicey. What about somebody like a Wilyer Abreu in Boston, who is definitely a strong side platoon, but has a lot of pop, even has a little trickle of speed? Jaron Duran's on the IL. Where would you go there between Wilyer Abreu and Leody Taveras? Wheelier, excuse me.
Yeah, Abreu, there is some pop in the bat, but it's not produce power and the underlying plate skills are really, really bad.
They're
I mean,
tough.
we're talking about a guy who has currently got a 77% zone contact, 85% is league average this year, and anything below 80 is atrocious. So when you're 3 percentage points below the atrocious line,
Yeah.
we'll call it the Carter Keyboom line since he's back. Hit a couple
Abreu
home
takes more
runs.
walks than I thought, I will say. Wheelier has an
Mhm.
11% in his small major league sample, 16 in the minors. I thought he had worse than that, so that helps a little bit, but your contact point here is well taken. He's riding a 417 BABIP right now to hit
Yeah.
353. Are you encouraged at all by the 274 in the minors, though, with the 290 BABIP? He didn't have to ride a high BABIP. Was he just making more contact, and maybe there's a future where Willier starts to make that contact in the majors, or was he just what, running hot in the minors or something. What do you think about that? Because those are some pretty good minor league numbers for Wheeler Abreu.
I mean, it looks like he's got a really good understanding of the strike zone. I mean, his O swing right now is 5%. Like,
Okay, so
like
okay,
that is
so what's up with that
unreal.
contact then? You said he's at 77 in zone contact. He's just
Yeah,
not. He
and
identifies.
he's swinging a ton in the zone. So he's swinging 70. I think he's just like he sees it coming towards the zone. He's like, oh, this is going to be in the zone. I'm going to swing, but he doesn't really know how to make contact. Like so,
And you know what else I would bet too? Maybe he's swinging at some pitches that because they're in the zone, he's like, yes, it's in the zone, but he can't do enough damage on those, and maybe he needs to be more selective there. Clearly, he has some selectivity prowess. Like I said, the walk rates are there for Abreu. It's a little bit misshapen on some of the other things, but I wonder if there's some talent here. Remember, he came over in the Christian Vasquez deal. They also got Emmanuel Valdez, who's contributed a little bit this year. That was a hell of a deal for Boston. Two nice
yeah.
little younger pieces there for Christian Vasquez. I like Abreu. I think he's intriguing. You guys know I love Tavares. So going back to the original guy we were talking about, I think I'd still hold Tavares right now because I think he has more speed. Abreu's more of like he might have some speed and it's really more power. But I just want to put Abreu on the radar because I do think he's a worthy pickup. I just would rather cut somebody besides Tavares.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is with Abreu is like I don't know what the playing time's going to look like rest of the way.
It's total platoon. Like he did start against a lefty yesterday, but it's because they had back-to-back lefties. I think for the most part, you're going to find Abreu against righties. So in the short term here, they have Valdez on Wednesday, and that's it, Framber Valdez. And then next week, at least the way it's slated right now, all righties, 6 righties for Boston. So Abreu does have some intrigue for me. I would just rather keep Tavares and cut somebody else if I'm going for that. All right, now here's the last one we're going to end on, and this is, again, very specific. Now, you and I love to promote to people, don't give up in rate stats, right? They can move a lot more than you think, even at this point in the year. Shouts to Todd Zola for the first one being the first one to write like a big article about it, really talk about it. That said, if you find yourself in a position where your batting average is really going to have a hard time moving one way or the other, right? Maybe you're just kind of solid right there in 4th or 5th, and you're 7 batting average points away from moving up and 5 from being caught or something, right? We're creating a pretty specific example. But the bottom line I want to ask is, do you hold somebody like Luis Arraez if you can't really have much mobility in batting average? He's hitting 227 in August with 2 homers and 1 steal. The BABIP had to come down, right? He was due for a little cold spell. I don't believe that he's forgotten how to hit for average. He could hit 412 the rest of the way, and I'd be 0% surprised. But the problem is when he's not hitting for average, Luis Arraez gives you nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. So in 10s and 12s, when he's not bringing you the batting average, and if you are in a situation where the batting average wouldn't even help you that much, even if he was bringing it, how cuttable is somebody like Arraez?
This is so weird because dude's in 227 during the month of August. He's still got a 350 batting average on the year. Like
Which leads baseball.
Yeah, like it's like he's got unreal contact ability. And even in this stretch, he's still making a 92.7% zone contact.
It's just bad BABIP. Yeah.
It's just elite. Like, and yeah, it is just bad BABIP. If you don't need the batting average, you obviously can cut. But like, if you do need the batting average, like I think he's going to be fine. Like I don't think
I
there's
agree.
going to be. I don't think there's an issue with him. I think he's just getting unlucky. And if he hit 350 rest of the way, I wouldn't be surprised. So,
like I said, 412 wouldn't surprise me the rest of the way. Like nothing from him batting average wise. Let me ask you this though, and because the reason I bring this up is I do feel like when you're trying to manage the categories down the stretch, some people might not even consider cutting somebody like Arraez. And I'm just saying you should be open to it if you really can't make the moves in batting average, even in a 15-teamer. If it gets to a point where there's just no real movement, do the math, right? What would it take? Because that's the thing too. Like we talk about how these categories can move a lot more. Do the math to see what's up. Yeah. I just think Arraez might be more cuttable than a lot of people generally think. Since you're so good at this, where is he in second base player rater, Luis Arraez, for the year?
Okay, he is gonna be 5th.
No, I stumped you. He's 15th.
Oh, okay.
And that's the thing, because
it's so empty. Yeah,
it's so empty. 5 homers, 2 steals, 54 runs, 58 ribs. Yeah. So that's the thing. And I'm not saying to run out and cut him willy-nilly, but if you've got things in order with your batting average and you just can't make that many moves, and you might be better off just going to get some speedster. You might be better off going to
Yeah.
get Wheeler Abreu and get his power. All right. So
And he's
that's
no
all.
longer a guy who's got multi-positional eligibility.
Exactly.
He's going to be second base only next year, which he probably should be drafted as the 15th second baseman off the board.
Exactly. So he fulfills a very special need, Luis Ariz does, but you might get your fill from him. You might have already gotten what you can get, and you might be better served to move on. Now, the other thing you have to be careful of, do you cut him to somebody who can get, 5 batting average points and then they pass you too? So you have to be strategic about it, but at least have it on your radar as a potential idea, something you might not have been thinking about, a month ago when he was, tearing the cover off the ball, going 3-4 hits a day. So, all right, that's it. That's going to be it for a hold and fold there. We're holding Hunter Green. We're holding but benching Cease. We're mostly holding Tavares, but he's cuttable if the right guy pops up. And then we're very open to cutting Ariz if the batting average no longer helps us. Less about his cold streak and more about the lack of other offerings.
Yeah.
So we both believe that his batting average will actually rebound the rest of the way and be fine. So,
Yeah.
all right, Justin, I hope you have a good one. Your chat's about to start right now.
Yep.
And I will talk to you later this week.
Take it easy.